already that can't make it, they already want the recording. So we'll get that recording for them. Welcome, everybody. We're going to wait a couple more minutes just as people roll in here. We had 112 RSVPs, and so far we have 36 rolling in here. So I guess we hit a topic people were interested in, which is great. We have a couple fireflies. Perfect. Welcome everyone. As you come in, if you can please just stay muted because there's going to be a big group of us here. We'll just wait one more minute before we get started here. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys so much for spending your afternoon with us today. We have a really interesting topic, which is actually building on a larger discussion that's been happening in our industry that we've been really wanting to move forward with all of you. So I'm really excited to have such great interest in this topic and so many attendees here with us today. Just so you know, this is being recorded. All of you will receive the slides as well as the recording after the webinar. So do know that's coming your way, and you'll see lots of data on here. And I'm sure the first thing you're going to wonder is, can I get these slides? Yes, we will share the slides with you. That is part of the journey for us. So the webinar or the roundtable today, the purpose of it is to really get some feedback from the industry. And we're talking about here today is how we might be able to build a shared impact framework for the shared kitchen industry. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and what we have in mind. If we can go to the next slide, please. So just to give ourselves a little bit of introduction, who's going to be the talking heads with you today. So my name's Ashley Colpaart. I am the founder and CEO of the Food Corridor. We are a software as a service company for owners and operators of shared use kitchens to help them manage their internal operations more efficiently. So we handle scheduling and booking and compliance. We also have our Kitchen EDU arm, which is our broader community where we provide ecosystem services and resources and best practices and events like our Shared Kitchen Summit to bring operators together to talk about our collective impact and how we might do things as an industry and help move the industry forward. So if you've never attended our Shared Kitchen Summit, you'll, by attending this webinar today, know that our early bird tickets go on sale on Monday. So put that in your calendar because there's a limited amount and the event does sell out every year. So if you did not have that on your agenda, put that on your agenda for Monday. Um, just a little bit more background on me and why I care so much, so deeply, and maybe a little bit of dorkiness. My background's in food systems. I have an undergrad in nutrition and foods. I have a master's in food policy and applied nutrition. And then I also have a PhD in food systems from Colorado State, where I studied underutilized assets in the food space and how we might leverage those assets to support local food economies, specifically linking up food entrepreneurs with commercial kitchen space. So that was my PhD dissertation, and why I care so deeply about the collection of data, survey tools, and how those tools can be leveraged by an industry to really help move it forward. So this is very much a passion project for me. And then I am very blessed and lucky for the last few years to be working with my cohort here, Holly, who has been instrumental in helping me with survey design and data collection and management and all the things. So I'll let Holly introduce herself and her background as well.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces from past Shared Kitchen Summits, and I'm delighted to have a chance to talk with you today alongside Ashley. My name is Holly Fowler. I'm co-founder and CEO of Northbound Ventures, which is a small consulting firm based in New England, where we have been focused for a long time on food systems planning, but most specifically, a part of the value chain, which includes intermediaries like shared kitchens, and helping do the business planning. And what brings me to this work and the appreciation for the possibilities of what the food corridor is able to facilitate through its network and data gathering is how it benefits businesses being successful in the future, both small food businesses, the individual food businesses, but also just the growth of these really valuable assets that have appeared and proliferated in our neighborhoods over the last decade or so. So. Um, I love shared kitchens. It's a lot of hard work. I have a special place in my heart from my background working in 14 years for a food service management company of being in kitchens and what it means to be an operator in a kitchen and wanting to support all of that hard work is a big reason why I'm here. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, just to kind of anchor in what we're going to be doing today, we're going to talk a little bit about why we think shared kitchens need to align our data more comprehensively. I'm guessing a lot of you believe that thesis, and that's why you're here today. Then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the work we've already done, because the cool part about this is that this roundtable is building upon work we've already done. So we're not starting from scratch, which is really awesome. What we need help with from you guys is helping us refine and move the process forward. So we're going to talk a little bit about the pilot that we did last year, the 2025 pilot, and then ask you guys what gaps still might exist in that survey tool. Then we'll talk a little bit about what it might look like to build this together. So mostly around survey distribution, and how we might collectively gather the data that needs to be collected because obviously, you guys are the liaisons into your membership, and will be a critical part of the distribution of a survey so that we could get really good data and really good reach. And then by the end, hopefully, we'll have a little bit of clarity on what the launch timeline looks for the food business survey and what our next steps will be collectively. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Everybody feel good? Thumbs up? Let's see, thumbs up. All right, everybody's there. All right. So one of the things, what we are building on, if you were at the Shared Kitchen Summit in Cleveland, I know we all had a blast. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was the bomb. But one of my favorite sessions as a nerd who loves data, was a research session that we did with Colorado State University and with Holly, where we presented on the Shared Kitchen Operator Survey that was published last year. We presented some of the results and how we might think about the shared kitchen industry as a food system player. And then we also had Holly talk a little bit about the food business pilot and really started asking the audience what they thought about what we could do collectively to build upon that tool. And we kind of did that conversation at the very end of the session, and it started getting like really robust conversation, and there was all these ideas moving around, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have to build on that momentum to keep this conversation forward. And that was the genesis of this roundtable. This conversation is to build upon that conversation we were having at the end of that session. So we know from that session that people were saying and telling us that their funders are increasingly asking them for measurable outcomes, not just numbers of how many people are in your kitchen, but actual measurable outcomes of what their impacts may be. We also heard from the audience that there were very different measurement tools. Some were not surveying their clients at all. Some used maybe an intake form at the beginning when like in a membership application, and that was all the data they were ever collecting. And then some were doing annual surveys of their clients where they were, seeing how things were moving along over time and actually doing some impact measurement. So it was all over the board what people were doing currently. So what we learned is that the data is very fragmented. There is some data out there, but it's kind of all over the board. And because of that, we kind of lack a shared narrative about the impact that these shared kitchens have on their local food system and collectively as an industry at large on the federal scale. And so that conversation really turned into an opportunity for the industry and almost an ask of the industry to say, hey, we should take this to the next level and really see what some coordinated leadership could do to kind of move this forward. So that's why we're here. So, what is this opportunity? So, the opportunity today, if we were to be successful at measuring the impacts that we have, we would have a shared instrument that can be distributed across the industry. So, instead of each individual kitchen hiring a consultant, building a survey tool, sending out the survey, collecting the data, writing a report, and then having to hire a consultant the next year to do that, this could be something that we could bake into the industry. It would also help us have collective standard definitions around what we mean by some of the terms and impact measurements that we have. It would certainly give us a national data set from which to derive information from. It also could help kitchens to benchmark themselves against other kitchens. So if one kitchen's really successful at certain impact measures and others aren't, we can use that for benchmarking and learning from each other so that we can move in the right direction because you can't change what you don't measure. So measurement's really critical. And then, for a lot of folks, it's really about if you're taking funding money from a funder, they want to see what they're doing is making a difference. And so they're asking for this information, and we want to be able to tell the stories in the ways that in the words that they use and the things that matter most to them. So I'm going to hand it over to Holly now to kind of talk a little bit more about what we mean by impact measurement, because that is kind of, related to that last bullet point. Like, what language do these funders speak? It's a little, it depends on the funder, but this is kind of what we're talking about here. So Holly, you want to go ahead and talk about impact measurement?
Yeah, and I just want to bridge a little bit more from where you were, Ashley, to getting here, which is also uh, in the evolution to the last kitchen operator survey, we asked these questions about impacts of the kitchen for the first time. And one of the answers that we got back repeatedly was, we don't know because we don't ask our kitchen members. So we realized that we were touching this space that really hadn't been explored for some folks have great answers. And that's amazing. But others seem to be answering with, good question. I don't know, right? Because that's something we'd have to ask members, which is also part of the origin story of how we got here. And then also to reemphasize the last point that Ashley made, which is the emphasis on data is not to take away from the storytelling because your food businesses that you are supporting have amazing stories, compelling, moving stories that we love hearing. And so while we might say data, data, data a lot, it's meant to be complementary and not a replacement for that very strong narrative, which you're already very good at, but to be able to broaden who is hearing the message in the case that the qualitative doesn't resonate with everyone, and some folks need more of a quantitative balance to the storytelling. And so that is definitely a space that we're operating from with this. Um, so in terms of impact measurement and how is that different from just counting members, we all of those numbers are still important. But the things that we're trying to get at here, with both asking questions about impact to you as operators and then eventually also to food businesses, is what changed because this kitchen exists? And this is in part driven by and motivated by a changing funding landscape as well, which is the other part, very important part of the origin story at the time that we were thinking about the last kitchen operator survey, is making the case for if this kitchen didn't exist, then what, right? These assets irreplaceable, right? In the communities that they serve. So what changed because this kitchen exists? Who benefits how? And how is its existence causing other shifts and reciprocating across the local food system? Um, and this is in part too about making sure that shared kitchens are seen for the value that they provide and not just as real estate. Um, Certainly, real estate development is important, but shared kitchens are this very important intermediary infrastructure in the food value chain, similar to food hubs. And when I look at the food hub space, I see, a decade's worth of consistent study, um, a clear economic multiplier that folks can point to, and those types of things. And we were missing that for the shared kitchen industry. And yet, your peers in the same place in the food value chain. And I thought this would be really important for shared kitchens to have as well. So we want to make your impact more visible because your food brands are really important. And you do a great job of telling their story. But we also need to do a better collective version for shared kitchens of telling your stories and making sure your part in the equation is visible. So there's many types of impact, and this is part of the reason for wanting to have this conversation and to understand what matters most to you. We have our thoughts and ideas, but we want to hear from you as well. Certainly, we can look at the more financial, the business and economic impacts of revenues, jobs created, and capital kind of leveraged. And those are popular impacts that many of you are already able to quickly point to in terms of your operations. Many of you are also able to point to the food system impact, the volume and value of local food moving through the system, your contribution to creating value-added products and helping them enter the market, so making the value chain more efficient. And then, of course, many of you have as part of your programming food security programs and support. On the equity and access impact, some kitchens are more or less focused, all kitchens are kind of focused on reducing the barriers to entry, but then also specifically catering to members from underserved or underrepresented groups and or focusing in specific geographies. And finally, in the partnership category, there's all of the ways that technical assistance that you provide through your wraparound services, especially true of incubators, how that helps bring food businesses from start to exit, basically from idea to brick and mortar. Businesses moving into brick and mortar is one of the most popular things and indicators that you were able to answer as part of your impact. And you do that in a variety of ways. Partnerships is also one of the biggest categories that you speak to as kitchen operators in the report. So that's a big category there. So these are all the types of impacts that we can go broad and deep on in terms of what we might be measuring. I think we've covered this, but to just re-emphasize, for funders, we're after communication points for you that are evidence of outcomes, not just activity, and hopefully bring stronger capital alignment to the industry and to you as individual kitchens as your financial and funding landscapes all change. For kitchens, there's the ability for Food Business Survey to give you some programmatic insights and operational insights that are helpful. Many of you know these already, but sometimes maybe you don't have a more anonymous way to collect this information from your food businesses. And then again, as the industry wanting to have this infrastructure recognized and have that benchmarking capability. So as Ashley mentioned, we went digging around to see how many versions of different food business surveys had been done previously. And in 2016, the Food Corridor, being the pioneer that it is, had done an initial quick and dirty survey of kitchen members, mostly to figure out what was going to be useful in terms of designing shared kitchens and building out the Food Corridor. In 2020, there was a very in-depth academic paper that I kept seeing referenced and went digging around for. And thank you to Colorado State University partners for being able to produce that behind the paywall or wherever it was behind the academic wall to get the cottage food research survey that was done. Very much focused on just cottage food businesses, not food businesses operating out of shared kitchens. And that was done, and USDA Agricultural Marketing Services did a whole response to that research as well. And then last year we did this pilot. We called it a shared kitchen member pilot. I'm reframing the language to follow the lead of the food corridor and calling it the food business survey, but there's some legacy language in here. And the graphic is intentional to show that there's the ripple effect. This is exponential. We're hoping to demonstrate the impact of shared kitchens, the impacts of your member businesses, and then the impact to the industry as a whole. Okay, so if you missed it, here's your chance to get caught up on the summit and what we presented there in terms of the food business survey pilot. Uh, this is primarily broken down by the profile of the food business, and that is uh, the occupational status of the food business operator. Is this full-time, part-time, hobby, you know, their retirement plan? What is this to them? Employees, part-time, full-time, et cetera, and gross sales, and then impact. What has operating out of a shared kitchen meant to you? What works well? What could be improved about your user experience? We had, I think, a decent response for something that was a little late idea in the process, right? Like we're doing the kitchen operator survey. We're like, hey, can we do a kitchen member survey? And so, with your help, because this was reliant on you helping to promote this, and through some of the food corridors channels, we had 101 responses from 28 states and British Columbia up there in Canada. So, decent geographic representation for sure. And we're going to go just do some highlights. We can share the full presentation from the summit as well. But we asked them as part of their impact, like what has having access to a shared kitchen uh, meant to your business. The top answer was professionalization of the business, gaining efficiencies and production methods. A lot of that is the know-how of the people in the room right here, just working alongside, troubleshooting, problem solving. That is one of the highest values that you offer to your food businesses. And a full 76% saying I could not have started my business without this, right? So that's those are powerful statements. Um, Also, I like this one because no one strongly disagreed, which tells you that somebody did disagree, that the kitchen has helped them to scale up production. But this is also always opportunity space, right? This is for our second stage businesses. This is for all of you out there in the world who haven't moved into co-manufacturing to support your food businesses, but want to do that very popular topic of the last two summits. Um, but this one's important too, access to an important network and peers and also service providers and resources. So shared kitchens are a bridge to all of these other people, peers, and service providers that make food businesses able to survive and thrive, basically. We also asked, how has your business grown and changed? I am convinced with more responses that these percentages will be higher. But they said they've added new customers, increased sales, expanded into new markets. Improved brand recognition comes up even more later. We'll see that in some of their more descriptive responses. Um, but yeah, innovating products, professionalizing systems, growing the employee and employment base. All of these things are super important. 5% secured loans or investor. That's an indicator I want to watch as we proceed with this work because I'm convinced that if we do a good job in terms of this impact, we will be able to move the needle on 5% having secured loans or investors because this work will help them have a more compelling case. This is the eye chart because every good presentation deserves one. Uh, this was the best thing about being a member of Shared Use Kitchens. I like these slides in particular because I think they're the ones that are going to speak most directly to you as operators in terms of where your food businesses are finding value and where there might be room for improvement. So I'm not going to go through all of this in detail, but I will say that you know this as well as anybody else, but supporting and peace of mind is a very typically intangible impact. And doing this helps us make things like that more tangible and quantitative to funders and others who aren't intimate with this industry to understand how important it is to just know that there is someone else who cares about your business being a success. It's invaluable. And then there's, of course, the challenge areas. This, I think, probably is validation to many of you of things that you suspect or you hear, but are still useful to maybe know that it's not just you either, that it's hard to make anyone happy with scheduling, cleanliness, and cost and affordability all of the time. But the challenges are here as insights, along with space management, communications, and other challenges. Okay, we're almost there. We're almost to the part where the talking heads stop and we turn it over to all of you. But just wanted to share in how like broad and deep uh, the way to go about this could be. I just wanted to highlight two examples that we're familiar with. La Cocina, who many of you know and is probably on here. I can't see in the ocean of faces out there who exactly is out there, but La Cocina has been doing a very in-depth um, measurement with its food businesses for some time. This their instrument is about 100 questions. It is very financially focused. It is very financially focused and specific. And for that reason, it has to be high touch. So they work hands-on, one-on-one with a lot of their members to deliver that. And Ashley, you'll have to correct me or La Cocina can correct me if that's inaccurate, but
No,
that's our
they're-
understanding of it.
yeah, no, they have annual meetings with their members, and their members have to bring all their financials, and they sit them down and walk them through the survey one-on-one to get that data. So yeah, it's very, very high touch.
Um, There's also another one that I'm familiar with is Hope and Mains, and the design of theirs, by contrast, is, and this is not to say either is better. It's just to illustrate differences. It's very relational focused. It is both how are we doing in terms of communicating with you and how we communicate with you, but also what is important to you relationally about being associated with this kitchen. So some of those things that we tried to get at as well in the pilot survey. Also, all of the questions about service quality and value, the equipment that you use, how you're instructed to use it, or do you feel supported in all of those ways operationally? And then the questions about shared success, like what is this meaning? How is your business growing? Like how are we supporting you to do that? Um, so this is just to illustrate that there's many different ways, again, going back to those original impact categories that I kind of went through to show them in practice by some of your peers and how's that working. And now that they've been highlighted, you can ask all of your more specific questions directly of them. So here's where we get to giving you as much as we can so that we can hear from you. The current survey is designed largely off from the pilot survey of food businesses. There's food business profile questions. Those are 15 questions. The who are you, where are you, employee questions, kind of stage of business and those types of things. And then there's 5 questions about kitchen experience. Those are more specifically to, is this your first time using a shared kitchen? Have you used other shared kitchens? And the why is it important to be in a shared kitchen? Needs and future forecasting are another 10 questions in there to kind of give you indicators of what's on the horizon, what would be useful, what are you hearing, what are you experiencing, those types of questions. And then there's these 10 impact questions that we have here, one of which is really a, a, a rating for a number of sub questions under the same one of basically the importance of having access to a shared kitchen. And then those two operating questions of what's the best thing and what's the most challenging thing about being a member of a shared use facility, and what would you change potentially? We might have to come back to these, but I think you're getting the idea of areas of questions that we have been asking and what we were thinking about asking. Um, and so I'm going to turn it back to Ashley now. We can flip back and forth. I'm running the slides if we need to go back to something, but I'm going to turn it back to Ashley to tee up the questions and turn the floor over to all of you to say, what do you think?
Yeah.
What are your reactions?
Thank you, Holly. Great job working through that. And again, thank you so much for your partnership on this. So, you mentioned the Food Hub surveying, and I just wanted to point out that the Food Hub surveys, because they have such great data, largely because USDA has been funding the collection of that data for so long, they've invested in that sector. And so we've been trying to put shared kitchens on the map to also say to USDA and AMS, hey, look at us over here. This industry matters and is doing really important work. And so that's a lot of the positioning that Food Corridor has tried to take with our partnerships with the regional food business centers and with the AMS, really trying to kind of to say, hey, look over here, there's important work happening. And frankly, that's why we've taken the lead in collecting a lot of this data and making sure that we have longitudinal data to show the growth in this industry and the impact, and why we're also moving towards thinking about impact measurement as a whole. So I just wanted to like preface this with the fact that this work isn't funded. It's kind of a passion project of the Food Corridor at this point. And so in moving forward, we really want to hear from you, and there's a few discussion questions, is mostly around kind of the operationality of doing a survey like this. Are there questions that would have like are number one on your list? Like my funders need to know X, or my funders are asking for Y, and I have no way of measuring that or knowing how to go about doing that. I don't have money to hire a consultant to develop the survey, but these are the things that I know I need to be measuring. Um, how is collecting this data difficult for you? And would it be helpful to have I don't want to say one size fits all, but maybe module related data collection opportunities? One of the things that we talked about and was asked at that session is, what if Food Corridor were to add some sort of portal within the software that is a data collection portal where you could turn on surveying once a year? It's your members can then fill it out. Maybe there's some sort of incentive structure where the food businesses can be incented to fill it out, maybe to get 1 hour free from your kitchen or something to get the response rate out. But then you would receive a localized report of your kitchen at the kitchen level, at the member level, but then also the broader industry report for the benchmarking against the rest of the industry, and that could be done through the software. Just an idea that came up at that event. What other things could we do to help distribute the survey? What ideas might you have around survey distribution and how we can get creative as an industry to get that response rate up? And increase participation. And then whether or not you feel like Food Corridor should play a role in this, or if it feels like, we're at the center of so much already, and people don't feel comfortable with that, or whatever it is, having a broad-based discussion about like what that would mean and what it would, frankly, what it would cost for us to do that if the industry really wanted that to happen. So we'll open it up to you. Again, this is a dialogue. We want to hear from where we're at now, where you think it needs to go, what ideas you have, what questions need to be added, so that we really can hear from you about what's going to be most valuable.
Hello. Can I speak about it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, my name is Ivy Baker. I'm I guess our program manager for the commercial kitchen in Tacoma Park, Maryland. Work for Crossroads Community Food Network, and our kitchen is on the cusp of being 10 years old next year. So still learning, but the idea of a kind of a universal survey or one that we can adjust in the food corridor app or platform, I think would be phenomenal because you tend to want to create surveys and things change, the kitchen dynamic can change and things like that. It's especially hard for us to get, I would say, numbers of revenue that are actually true, I would say, or just a consistency. So having that option would be like pretty great for us, and it would be useful to present to stakeholders and things like that. So I think it's a phenomenal idea.
Thank you, Ivy. Does anyone else want to hop off mute and contribute their thoughts?
Yeah, th this is Mark Holland. I'm the director of the Kitchen Incubator at Chattanooga. Um, I'd say th this is great. Ashley, I was at the summit, and I think I met with Holly as well. We're a nonprofit, and as a nonprofit kitchen incubator, we're always looking for data. I would love to see some of these metrics be incorporated into like an intake of the food corridor. Some of the things like we have to collect, like the demographics. Are they an LMI? What is their income level when they first come in? Uh, but the yearly numbers that we're looking for is like sales, jobs created, their percentage of their growth. And so we're having to report everything to all of our funders. One other thing that I was interested in, and maybe this is a question for Holly, when we do presentations to our funders, one of the things that they told us to stop doing is giving all these percentages. And I don't know if you have heard about that or not. They required us to read a book called Making Numbers Count by Chip Heath. And so I don't know if y'all have read that or not. So that's the storytelling of numbers. So now our funders are saying you can tell the story. How can you tell the story without just inundating us with all percentages as well? So I don't know if you've heard that or not, but that is something that we have found from our foundations especially.
I appreciate that. And I think there are two things to it. It's why we put the N, right? The number of respondents, because when you read percentages, you don't know if it was two people who were the 50% or 2,000 people that were the 50%. That's part of it. But you are speaking our language because again, this is meant to be complementary to the narrative, right? To use the number but illustrate it with the storytelling is important.
Okay. Well, I'm all for you guys adding something to this. Ashley, some kind of like survey. I will tell you this though, I like the like you said, incentivize because the people in the kitchen do not want to answer any surveys. We have to collect all kinds of survey data, and we're at 10% right now. 10% of the people will actually give the surveys back. So the smaller the survey and the most impact that we can get for them, I think is going to be the best. And that's why I think it could be a combination of both. Maybe some of the impact, the onboarding process and the yearly data that we collect can be part of the program of Food Corridor. We can collect more information that way in their profile. I would like to pull up a profile from one of our people on Food Corridor and say, this is your yearly sales, this is the demographic, without actually having to do a survey for it. I don't know if that's something possible and they could update it yearly.
Yeah, Mark, I'll speak to that just because it was mentioned at the session where it's kind of like if we're trying to increase the response rate, if it was uh using and being able to use and rent the kitchen was like this was like a mandatory thing. Like once a year you have to do your survey and you're blocked from the calendar until you get your survey in, just like you have your food business license and your insurance and your food handler card. Have you filled out your survey data yet? Like, operationally we wouldn't, we could help suggest ways to build that in, but I think that that would have to be part of like if you want to be a member here, here's, a must do sort of thing. And then that data would be, may not be 100% because people might just kind of breeze through it and not give quality data. But it is something that we have thought about with how to get that response rate up. Angela, your hand is up. Do you want to hop in here?
Yes, there's someone in the chat asking how to raise their hand. You just go on the react. I didn't have time to respond in the chat. I'm not sure who it is. So
Can I ask Suzanne Moses to mute? Because I think I'm hearing her. Yeah, thank you. Right. Okay, somebody, I hear someone in the background. All right, go ahead, Angela.
okay, so good to see you all. I feel like I'm responsible for this. In my one-on-one with Matt at the summit in November, because I have our booking calendar broken into segments, people can book like 4 menu blocks based on our hours of operation because we're open 20 hours. Was a question from the city of Vancouver, who our contract is through, is what was the percentage of the kitchen time that had been used outside of what was being presented on the dashboard. So the dashboard is basically saying like there's 1.5% of the time in the kitchen being used, which is a very low number. And so that supported me in figuring out what that math really looked like, so that I could communicate that to them. And being that this whole shared kitchen industry is kind of uncharted territory, is what I'm feeling like with us having to prove, that it's beneficial to people. It's really hard as a service provider, right, not to push this out as like a social service, so to speak, because now we're asking what feels like personal information to people who are not really familiar with the system, right? That they're having to engage with and trust as being an entrepreneur and starting a small business. So I did not want to exploit the members by using their information to push the agenda of the powers that be, right? And so that was my conversation to them is we're not offering them, it's not like it's a free service for them to use the kitchen, right? In exchange for their information. But then also, which kind of brings me to my point, there are people who are already established with their food business. Maybe they have a meal prep company. They're not coming from the same, background, so to speak, as others. So the way that we present the data collection effort to them needs to be different than we do with some other folks. And so Holly made mention, she said, you can't change what you don't measure, right? And so for a lot of the work that we're doing, it's to just change, the overall narrative, the story, the outcomes, the impacts, the intention behind supporting, small businesses, so to speak. So I'm like, how do you really ask people the same way? Being that you're dealing with like different kinds of, sometimes you're dealing with older people, younger people, people with English as a second language, how do you approach them with that? Because sometimes if you do it through, online or electronically, it kind of looks, like something you would take offense to or something that you would be intimidated by just because it's a system that people aren't familiar with. So that's my issue is how do you approach someone to propose this? And then forcing it, I feel like is like totally out of line. But like, I don't know. That's where I was stumped at. And that's the conversation that I was having with Matt is like, how do you know,
Really great points, Angela. Thank you.
The question is evolving in the chat. We're making progress here because part of this is also like what matters to food business is your question of what would make this survey valuable enough. because we're hearing we hate surveys, right? It's hard to deliver another survey. Surveys can come across as being extractive and exploitive, but yeah. And then the question is, right? We don't know, do we know what our food members, our food businesses, what metrics matter to them? I don't know. Maybe that's the first question that we have to ask. And not, this is already from a place of not assuming that dollars are the only determinant of success, basically. Are there other hands? Suzanne. Suzanne has chatted, hand raised, recognizing that Suzanne would like to speak. Can you unmute, Suzanne?
Yeah, Suzanne, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
You're good.
Gotcha.
Okay. I usually do it on Teams. I don't know how to raise my hand. First of all, I do want to thank the gentleman for mentioning that he is in a nonprofit status where I am in the same. And our funders, which we only have one right now, but we have great promise to expand, wants to know what shifts are in the economy, in the food system, directly impacting where we are so that we can measure ourselves. They also do not like percentages. They like stories and they like data. And that's very hard to collect. And as far as our clients, I have enough trouble getting 30 surveys filled out at a free cooking event face to face. People do not do it here without incentives. So something would need to come to the table, something that is a gift that they perceive as valuable. And then thirdly, I would like to echo on the food corridor. I love it. It works wonderful for us. However, we are UGA, Department of Ag only, and 99% of the leads I get are for people that we cannot service. So I get very little information. I get no phone number. I get an email, and it's a whole lot of work to know end results. So I would like to see at least more information in there. Nothing proprietary, nothing that is personal, but more concrete information. So for me, I can help guide this person either into our kitchen or certainly another food corridor listed kitchen.
If I may at this time, of course, I see more of these, questions are for kitchens which are not for profit. I am for profit, and whenever I asked, my makers for any sort of numbers, they were very reluctant in giving me any numbers as such. But they were willing to tell me, okay, we have doubled up our business or tripled our business, but they will never give me, the numbers, because they always thought because I'm for profit, I'm going to jack up my pricing. So a survey on food corridor is a perfect thing because we can incentivize our makers very easily. I can offer them a day's worth of work, with no charge to entice them to give, more and more information. But then again, you know what? Having sort of a questionnaire which is not too much in, going in depth for personal information like finances would be a perfect thing. And that way we can have, some similar data which can be combined to push out, the final thing, good averages.
So the food businesses prefer to report in percentages, but the funders don't want percentages.
Absolutely. They don't want to tell me, okay, we were doing 50,000 a year. Now we are at 75 or 100,000. But yes, yeah, we have doubled up our business, and that's where I catch them. I say, you've doubled up your business, but you have not doubled up your time in the kitchen because 90% of them are working under the radar. They want their paperwork and stuff, and that's it. So I have to sometimes, work as a cop, trying to, tell them that if health department or the county health department approaches me to audit my paperwork, they do ask me, is this company using, so I have the digital, uh, footprint available via food corridor, and then I have a hard copy. I make them sign every time they come in. They have to physically sign the the check in and check out. So it's a tough thing.
Mark, do you have your hand up again?
Yeah, I was just going to say he was talking about people don't want to give their dollar amount. They do not. They think that you're trying to pry into their finances. And so what we have had to do here is we don't ask for exact numbers. We now do ranges. Are you at 100 to 125? Are you 120? So we don't ask for exact. We're just saying just give us the ballpark figure because we do have to report those to our funders. So that is the one thing that we have found to get people to, we don't ask for their personal information. All we need to know how many jobs, full-time, part-time, and how much, what your range is. And we fit, that has been the easiest way that we have found. And so, Holly, you were asking what the funders are looking for. They're looking for survival rate. They're looking for 3 year. Don't tell us how long you've been in business, 10 to 15 years. The funders want to know, okay, what is your 3 year survival rate? How many jobs are created? What is the combined collective revenue that your kitchen incubator is the impact they're having to the community, and they're looking for job growth, for economic impact. Like for each business, did you grow that business by 20%, 25% over how many years? So that's kind of like the metrics that all of our nonprofit foundations and fundraisers are looking for. They want to know who you serve, are they able, what their economic impact is, and what impact are you having at the kitchen incubator to the overall community. And so that it's and anybody in the nonprofit world and even in him with the profit world, it's hard to get that information from every single body. So we're trying to figure out a fine line between online surveys versus requiring them to do quarterly one-on-ones. And so we're probably going to start a mandatory one-on-one quarterly checks to make sure that people are giving us that information. And so what we have found, there's another business incubator here locally. If you don't do your quarterly checks, the price that we give you is a nonprofit price. You will go to market value rate if you don't do your quarterly survey. So that is one of the things that we're using as far as instead of incentivizing them to give them something, they're going to have to pay more money if they don't meet with us. And that's going to be part of the requirements to be at the incubator. I know that doesn't work for every for-profit, but for our nonprofit, that's what we're going to start implementing next year.
Mark, you don't lead with the fact that they wouldn't be able to work with you anymore. That to me it seems like, the fear of missing out of having the chance to collaborate with you would be enough to incentivize them to always show up for that quarterly one-on-one. Just the fact that you get time with Mark to do this, right? Like,
I'm telling you what,
what more do you need?
Holly, my calendar is full, you know. Y'all were talking about it in the very beginning, and I didn't want to say anything, but talking about how many people incubate to brick and mortars. We are a new within our 5 years. I would say 5 years, we're in our new. We're at the point right now where we're having brick and mortar incubations. I got 3 going on this month. I am completely full. So, I mean, that is huge for us as a nonprofit and we're finally making an impact where funders are coming to us and say, how can we help? That is huge. Anybody been in the nonprofit trying to get a funder to help your entrepreneurs? We are now having them knock down our doors and saying, because Ashley, with our recognition of winning the Shared Kitchen Summit, we went all over our city here. It brings attention. So just to let you know, Ashley, the impact you're having has made an impact on us as far as funders wanting to say, what is that? So we were able to share with them that. So thank you so much for doing this for the Shared Kitchen community because we have seen the impact.
Ashley, I want to do a time check. I love all of this comment. I love the whole not-for-profit, for-profit. I love the challenge of figuring that out and what works for both. I love the fact that the funders themselves don't necessarily agree on what they need or want, we can address that. Like every sticky wicket that has been brought up is like interesting to us. I see Ashley nodding vigorously because we're both in this to solve it in a way that makes sense for everybody. So I wanted to do a time check with you, Ashley, to see um, where we're at, and if you need me to advance a slide or.
Yeah, no, I think, we have about 3 minutes left in the hour, and we also have this for 30 more minutes. We could just kept it an extra 30 minutes if people had additional comments or suggestions or need, we do have the AI note taker taking notes. So, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up here. But if you haven't spoke yet and you have something you want that you think needs to be captured, considered, please do stay on a little bit longer and voice what it is you need to say, because we're taking notes on all of this and we want to make sure everybody's voice is captured if you have something that you wanted to contribute. For the rest, we will send out the slides. We will send out the next steps. We plan, actually, Holly, if you do want to go, for the timeline here, here's where we're at with our timeline. So we wanted to be collecting this operator feedback. So if you have specific feedback, you want to email us or stay on after this. We hope to refine the survey, the next version of the survey tool in May, and it's going to be moving out of test form and into launch form in June. And then in the fall, we'll have the preliminary findings from the survey and present those initial findings at the Shared Kitchen Summit. What I can tell you that won't happen is this will not be integrated into the food corridor in any way, shape, or form, because that's a very product dense related thing, but this will potentially lead into what sort of modules might be able to be added to it so that the collection rate can be higher. So there will be some ways we can think about how to distribute the survey through food corridor, but this idea of making it inherent and part of the application, we will still need to tool through and think through from a product standpoint how we can make that possible on your behalf and still do some customer discovery there. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that this isn't something we can just turn on really easily and all of a sudden is going to appear next week. So that's where we're at. So stay tuned for the next part of this conversation, and please do, when you see the surveys come out, help us get that distributed in the manifestation at this point that we can get it to the hands of the people that need to fill it out. So for those that want to stay on and we'll capture your notes, I see Janet's hand is up. And for the rest of you, so great to see you. Tickets go on sale Monday for the Share Kitchen Summit if you want early bird. So put that on your calendar. And I hope to see everybody soon in Providence. We will be wearing funny wigs and funny hats and hopefully having a fun time celebrating our nation in Providence. So thank you all so much for making it, and we're going to stay on a bit longer to get everybody else's feedback. So good to see everybody.
All right, Ashley, Tyler, Mark, Holly, nice talking to you.
All your friends, Sarah Beat. All right, Janet, it looks like your hand's up, so why don't we pull you into the conversation here?
Hi, thank you. My name is Janet Rumble. I'm the Deputy Director of Crossroads Community Food Network. So I work with Ivy at our TPSS Community Kitchen. And yeah, I think this is really great. Thank you for putting this on and for thinking about all this great stuff. We're also a nonprofit, so we have a lot of outcomes to report and to stories to tell in various ways. And I just want to go back to the beginning of the presentation, and I'm just curious how you envision you or us extrapolating the member data or the member information into these broader questions about needle moving and shifts in the local food system, especially since we're all parts of individual local food systems. And so I don't know if you had general ideas about how to get maybe complementary information in order to report on that kind of impact. and or if somehow you're extrapolating it from this, total of member survey input.
Holly, did you want to address that or?
Oh, yeah, I just put in the chat. My ultimate dream is a world in which we're able to do ripple effect mapping for the industry and for these kitchens. So totally appreciate the question, Janet, of also asking like, how do you generalize this when we're also talking about local and regional food systems and all of those ecosystems look quite different? And it's another good question to ask a longer question, actually, of not just what does this mean to you, but we could also be asking the question of what does the existence of your food business in your food ecosystem mean, right? There's a next level question of that ripple effect of I am here because this shared kitchen exists, and this is what it means to me. Because I am here, this is what, and this takes us back to that original question too of like, if it's not just about the numbers, what is the impact that the food business is actually trying to have? Because it might just not be a business to earn dollars. And so in my dream of dreams, when we are having these conversations about the impact, it involves an understanding of the landscape in which the impact is happening and those earlier slides about who benefits and being able to really answer the question of who benefits and how as to the why this matters. Like,
I'll also say, Holly, kind of on the from an academic standpoint, I know that like a lot of the conversation at the beginning of our session in Cleveland was around kind of like how do we want to describe the economic multiplier or the impact as a industry. So on average, if a shared kitchen exists in a community, what does that mean? What does that do? Does that mean there's, 10 new jobs in a year on average or some sort of economic multiplier? And so I know that like with Dawn Thilmany McFadden and AggieCon, and I see Rebecca Wasserman Allen is on here. I don't know, Rebecca, if you want to come off and talk about the work that you're doing at Kentucky, but that is where a lot of these food infrastructure plays have gone is what is the economic multiplier, what is the ripple effect, and how can we measure that as an industry? So a lot of it is very much about aggregating up that and then dividing by the N of number of shared kitchens so that we can, as an industry, have that bigger story to tell. So Holly was taking the very like micro, like what does this mean for my local food system? But I also see this as an industry. How can we better tell our stories of these kitchens are so critical and important in connecting people that want to start businesses with infrastructure they wouldn't have access to otherwise. And what does that mean for the ripple effect in the community and generational wealth and all of those things? So,
and not important just as individual kitchens, but this network is important, right? Like this doesn't exist. The power of a shared kitchen doesn't exist without other shared kitchens, right? This is the two's competition, three's a destination. We're well beyond three, but this is definitely that. I saw Rebecca unmute. Andrea also has her hand up and is being very polite, Ashley.
okay.
More polite than me, who just steamrolled both of them to make sure I got my comment in.
All right, so we'll do Rebecca and then Andrea.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo exactly what Ashley said. So I'm finishing up my PhD at Colorado State University, working with Dawn Thilmany, who was one of the people that helped provide those multipliers for food hubs and do some of that work in the academic space. And starting in August, I'll be a professor at University of Kentucky, working specifically to support food entrepreneurship. So really excited to continue this work, especially if you're within the space and that general region, as I'll be working with Extension. And one of the things that exactly like Holly said is you all are already so good at telling those individual impact stories, right? Having those anecdotes of the work that you do with your food businesses, that I hope to really be able to provide a little bit of that nationwide context of how does this fit within food systems? What does that mean for like downstream and upstream businesses, and try to give a larger landscape so that when your funders are asking you for numbers, you have a place to go where you can say, well, our industry across the country is doing this, and this is why we're important, to be able to complement some of your individual stories. So I look forward to that opportunity and to continue to support the work that you all do.
Thanks, Rebecca. Andrea, love the art.
Thank you. Welcome to Findlay Market. So I work with Findlay Kitchen, and I just want to say thank you so much for hosting this and for talking about these things. One of the things that I don't think we've really dived into is the economic impact of the businesses that don't continue on. And that's a picture that we have really struggled in our sphere to tell of like what happens when a business decides that it doesn't want to be in business anymore, but they've gotten to try it, and telling those stories to make them as compelling as the folks who are incubating out into a brick and mortar storefront or into a co-packer. Because there are so many of them. Like that is the larger percentage of the businesses are that is their outcome. And that's not a failure. And so we've been really struggling to figure out like how can we capture that information and tell that story, not just within our kitchen, but within the industry and like the places that don't have access to kitchens and how many people that don't have access to that and then end up spending their entire life savings trying to start a business that then fails versus what an incubator kitchen can do for folks, and like the dollars saved.
Right. It's like the de-risking of
Yes.
starting a business. Oh, yeah, that's super compelling.
Can I add a 2 cents real quick to that notion? So one thing we do, and I got to give a lot of credit to Janet, we put all the businesses that, decide to not be in business anymore, they become our alums. They're on our website. You see pictures and stories of what they've done, things like that. So I think that really captures at least some essence of what was created and what the community, was able to experience. But having those alums like listed on our websites and that connection in some way to be a part of the greater network, I think at least gives some of that qualitative aspect to what was just mentioned.
I mean, Rebecca's helped to think about how we measure the power, the impact, the power of visibility.
Yeah, the de-risking is so interesting because it's like, you can go in for 6 months and pay $400 a month to access a kitchen to do a proof of concept to see if you actually are going to make it. Or you can, take a second mortgage out on your house and, now you're homeless at the end of it and weren't able to de-risk that. And that to me is so interesting. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. So I appreciate your thought, Andrea.
Rebecca, you don't actually have to answer that question right now.
Yeah.
I also want to work with you someday to try to answer that question.
Okay.
There's a few
Erwin,
ideas.
Erwin had the answer. That's why he has raised his
Erwin.
hands.
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Yeah.
No, I just
Lay it
wanted to
on us,
reinforce-
Erwin.
Absolutely. So no, thanks, Holly. I just wanted to reinforce the idea that I think the de-risking is a really interesting way of framing it. Just at a high level, because because it's definitely a different type of success, but it's certainly for sure hard to quantify. And I think that's I would just support that approach. That's it.
Yeah, it's like deciding, no, I don't really like doing this. I'm gonna go do something else. Great, that's a win.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in the nonprofit world directly, so I don't know how the funding world sees it. From a macro, all right, from a international economic development perspective, de-risking is certainly a concept that's viewed in a positive nature when it comes to, say, development lending in an international context. So to the extent that domestic funders or US-based funders look at things happening in the US in that same light, that could be a thing that's intuitive. To the extent that that's a concept that they don't resonate with or isn't part of their normal frame of reference, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd mentioned Dawn Thilmany McFadden in Ag Econ at CSU, who is my advisor and is also Rebecca's advisor. She taught me something. She teaches the Beginning Farmers and Ranchers program. And she says if you have 12 beginning and farmer rancher students that go through the program, at the end, if you have more than half that decide that they don't want to become farmers and ranchers, then you were successful at running your cohort.
Fair enough. Yeah.
We actually have a class that's literally called Growing into a Storefront. And that's part of what I run is the like educational programming. And the class is 8 weeks long and it teaches people like all of the different skills that they need to open a brick and mortar. And the majority of people come out of that class and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I've decided I am not ready and I don't want to do it. And I'm going to be on pause. And like maybe after 3 or 4 years, some of them end up going into one, but they have taken more time before jumping into a space because they realize how much shit goes into it. And I find that to be very successful.
I think we have a session at the next summit that's percolating here. Does anyone else that hasn't spoken yet want to hop on and give any feedback related to the survey, the questions, the distribution? Angela,
As you
you
said,
we-
anyone
no, you're good. You were first there.
anyone who hasn't spoken. So I was a little sparked by what Andrea just said there at the end with all the shit that's involved in starting a business. And as someone who comes from lived experience, like in this space, I'm able to like give people some, I don't know, some. My uncle said every successful man, behind every successful man in America, a crime has been committed, right? So it's all based on what's allowed now versus what had been, previously utilized by people to get to where they are. And so in our case, it was always the money, right? So I was like creating scholarships to support people who were coming in to start. We started a lending agency last year to be able to loan money to folks, even folks who were undocumented. Like there was just all kinds of things happening to make sure that we could provide that, some cushion for those risk factors. But at the end of the day, if we are building a community, in these kitchens with businesses that are all kind of starting on the same level, there's really like no way to avoid it. I had some young girls start a business together, and one like found love online and moved away, right? And was like, I'm done, and left the other girl. I mean, they were at the market, they were booming, they were, doing really good business, something else made her steer the other way. So while we were trying to get people to be on the same page and one accord, there's a factor of fear that's kind of always exists. And so it's hard to get around that, to get people established. And again, like I said, and then turn around and present them with, like conditions and other things where they have to kind of assimilate again, let a guard down and just be vulnerable and put themselves out there. And that also harms their progress too. So I don't know. I was just a little bit triggered when she said that because it felt like I was constantly like patching wounds for the members, and this is just doing that whole that business development piece, right? I was like patching wounds for people that weren't even there yet because they had already anticipated the worst of what could happen because they didn't have that financial cushion. They didn't have that time cushion, one of the same time and money. And so yeah, I just wanted to add that in because it's a heavy, it's a heavy carry.
Angela, did you say you started your own loan program?
Yeah, we have a lending agency. It's funded from a bank out of Seattle. And they basically were like, if you can get enough people to borrow, a certain percentage of what we've given you, then we'll, keep going until you guys can become self-sufficient. And we were able to, right? We were able to because people did need the money. So we want to have like our own little online bank. That's what that looks like. But then there is the financial education piece that has to happen, and then you have to bring people in to support that so it can keep going. And yeah.
I think that's something too. Ashley Irwin's co-presentation was so valuable at the last summit and thinking about, innovative models of how projects get funded, but then individual food businesses. And Angela, thanks for letting me ask you that follow-up question because I thought I heard you say that. And I definitely have an ear out for where the current financial structures just are inadequate for the realities of our food system operators, like across the board. I think about Walden Mutual Bank for farmers and their program. There's an interesting program that I've heard Lisa Raioli out of Hope in Maine in Rhode Island speak to recently. Now I've just heard it from you, Angela. We heard it at the last summit in Erwin's presentation, and I apologize, I forget who co-presented with you, Erwin, but I am just so impressed at anyone who says, okay, I see that you don't work for me and you won't work for me, so I'm going to go figure this out with someone who is willing to think innovatively about financing and investment. So thanks for pioneering that space and finding a partner to be with you on that. That's great, Angela.
Mm-hmm. Incredible.
That's my push to recruit Angela and Andrea, I think, too, and Ivy, and gosh, can we have everybody here present at the next summit,
I feel like
please?
we're having a mini summit right now. It's pretty awesome.
So I actually did, I mean, like last week, because I missed the email. I was out on TO, and the email came in, and I guess I just never followed up on it, but I did fill out the form.
Okay. Well,
Just
pilot
FYI, since I have you here, I'm shooting my shot.
score. Does anyone else want to? We have a lot of lurkers. I love it. Danae.
Yeah, I'm brand new to this. In my retirement gig, I'm helping a CDC that has a food works program, shared food kitchen, but I spent years as a funder. So I love listening to you guys complain about funders because I agree with all of it. Sitting on that side, coming from the business world, I could never understand a lot of the logic that comes out of the funding space. So I appreciate it. And when I love this presentation, I love the shared survey, and I really see in my own house the problems that we have getting the results back. And I'm beginning to think that the answer, not necessarily for what you want to put on the table, but maybe as a model for individual organizations to use, as a hybrid approach where you say, I don't know how big your place is, but if you have 50 client businesses, you do a very basic general survey that doesn't take them a lot of time for 80% of them, right? And the incentive is the reverse incentive. A negative incentive is if you don't do it, you don't get it, right? You don't get all the benefits of being able to work here. And for those 10 or 20%, that's a manageable number for the size of the organization. You do a deep dive survey sit down, right? So it's not overly time consuming, doesn't eat up all the time of the staff, but you do end up walking away with 10 good stories with data embedded in the story, right? When you're sitting across from the guy that trusts you, he'll tell you, now I'm talking from a nonprofit perspective, he'll tell you what his income is, and he'll tell you what his growth is, he'll tell you what his problems are. And maybe another incentive is that if you have the ability in your shop, and we do, is to put a marketing package together for them or something on the exposure end that brings them to the customers. So I don't know, that's what I'm going to go back and talk to my people about.
I love it.
It just, balancing the resources is just so hard. And it's so easy to sit in some shop and say, it's just 6 data points we're asking you for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I also think about it in like modules, because the surveys are already pretty long. I mean,
Yeah.
it's long. And so it's kind of like what modules are the most important for the kitchen to measure. But then, at a national level, if we had enough people do, like you said, the 10 that did the whole thing, then, then we would have some big numbers. So I like the approach,
As a complete outsider, when I first came in and was going to sit down and try to write the first script for them, I said, just give me a name of one person that'll sit down and talk to me, right? And they gave me one. And if you ask the right questions as a matter of interest, not a survey, they will start, just pouring their hearts out, right? If they're having a good experience. And then that's what you want to take back to the funder anyway.
maybe our platform needs to be StoryCorps,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes.
It's
It's way more fun.
are you listening to StoryCorps? No, I'm listening to the food corridors. But they're still stuck in their car, in their driveway, or in traffic at the light sobbing, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
feeling moved by it. So
We have to start a podcast. That's what that was. A long
Oh,
podcast.
All things
you
lead to
don't
the
already have one of
podcast.
those? You don't already have one, Ashley?
Too many podcasts. Too many.
I had just one more thought that was crossing my mind. I don't know who mentioned this, maybe Holly or Ashley, but I think you found some significant data about cottage foods. And my thought is really the question is it does it make more sense to become a cottage food business or join a commercial kitchen? And
Gosh,
that's
Ivy, you're touching the third rail
okay.
of
All right.
Ashley Colpaart's world. No, it's good. It's perfect. It's great. It's
Yeah,
great.
so that's something we're wondering, and I literally heard this morning. I shared it with my team. Maryland may be increasing revenues from $50,000 per year to $100,000 for those cottage food businesses. So, that's significant, but I guess, it's maybe describing some growth. So yeah.
I know Gretchen Moran is still on here in Maryland, and that was a big data point that came out of our research for her project. And I'm thinking, Gretchen, did we do that? Did we make that mistake that they are raising, are they raising it to 100,000 because we did that?
So we've had it's amazing what I found now that we're finally looking for funding, and I am so impressed. As you know, Holly, I've been really sort of disillusioned and cynical because at the county level, we've really struggled to get support as a small business. But at the state level, we have some amazing resources that I've just recently tripped over that are going to change the game for us financially. And so I'm not at all surprised that they're raising this. Yeah, so I've already shared with the Shared Kitchen Alliance. There is a new program in Maryland called Own Your Future. If you're in Maryland and you haven't looked into this and you're going to buy anything that's real estate related, you need to know about this program. I think I'm maybe their test baby because you have to fill out a different application because there's not even an application for it yet. But they're literally turning around communications with me in 4-hour time blocks. Like that's how fast the process is moving that we're getting through the underwriting. And again, it's just because I'm going to go into an area that has a food gap score that's pretty high, and we're doing something that they think is really important, which is starting a shared kitchen. So I'm not at all surprised that Maryland wants to open up their food cottage revenue cap. I do know that we struggle with any sort of enforcement of regulation because like every other government, their staffing is so minimal. But I think they also know they need to build small businesses, and there's no question in my mind before Holly and I ever did the research. And I'm in the data space. It's where I started. So we did a survey back in the beginning of 2025, was it, Holly? Has it been a year? We started with a survey to make sure that my county actually needed a shared kitchen, which was kind of a joke because everybody knew we needed it, but everybody wanted the data. The data now has literally, I think that's why our trajectory is moving so fast, because we're able to show them the 110 data points that Holly and I collected that prove that we're supposed to be here. So yeah, I don't know what point I'm making, but we're fast tracking right now. And to Ashley's point, I think I said to Ashley a number of times, I really need somebody to talk me out of this. I have yet to have that signal that says we shouldn't be doing this. So we're just super excited to be moving forward this fast. And Maryland's a good place to be building a small business. I did not feel that way 2 weeks ago.
Nice. Nice to hear from you, Gretchen. All right. We have about 5 minutes left. Does anyone want to contribute anything else to the dialogue related to the survey?
So Ashley, just from a software perspective, I do want to really champion you doing sort of I can't remember what the name of it is, but where basically during the process of your user experience, you can just pop up a single question for your users to say, just out of the, you see these in software applications, right? Out of the blue, you might see a question that says, so, how many tamales did you sell today? And it's not a survey, it's just one single question and they answer it and they move on. And that sort of slow drip of data collection is really valuable. And to have it in a platform like the Food Corridor that's sort of already integrated in your operations, I would 100% support that and want that in the software, because then you're not asking your people to fill out a survey. It's like we do net promoter scores this way. How much do you like us? 0 to 10, frowny face to happy face. Those sorts of little bits of collection add up to the aggregate that you want, and they don't feel as intrusive.
I love it.
I just want to name the next report the slow drip.
The slow drip.
The slow drip.
Slow drip.
The slow drip survey. I'm gonna peel off at 4:30. Ashley.
Yeah, I'm headed out too. Well, good to see everyone. Submit your session proposals because you all have such interesting things to contribute about what's happening in your neck of the woods. But we look forward to seeing everybody in Providence. Tickets go on sale on Monday. You heard it here first. So thank you all for coming. We'll send the notes, we'll send the recording, and we will send the follow-up next steps for phase 2 of the food business survey. So thank you all so much for making the industry what it is. We love you all so much.
Yeah, Ivy, read the blog that Ashley posted in the chat.
Oh yeah, I did write a very long blog about that topic we were talking about. So yeah, that's my PhD in me not being able to hop out of it ever. So enjoy my blog. All right, good to see everyone.